50 years ago, in June 21st through the 24th, Pennsylvania got one of the worst hurricanes ever. But first, I'm going to tell you about where the Hurricane Agnes started. It started down in the Yucatan Peninsula, and it's a strange place for it to start. Not many hurricanes starts down there. And it went across a lot of the Gulf of Mexico, got stronger, and was a hurricane. It got out there so far and went to Cuba, and got the north part of Cuba. But it took 2 lives there and headed to Florida. It went up to the Panhandle, and that's where things started to get less hectic, but there was some flooding and some deaths there. And the storm started to dissipate when it got over Georgia and North Carolina and South Carolina. It went out to sea again, and what's going to be coming up next, you will see in a minute. Yeah, it decided to go north. They after it went across the sea, the Weather Service, National Weather Service, decided to stop the warnings, and it went out to sea. They weren't expecting to go back across where it went. They were expecting to go towards the east, and it changed courses on them, and they didn't know it did it. Back then, it wasn't that good. It did have the services, but not as great as it is today. So when it changed course, there was nobody telling them why it changed course. You can see it hit Florida. Nobody there, even this one, and why and how it changed course. It head up through the Panhandle and up into Georgia. It had flooding and some destruction, but it didn't do as much. But there was a few deaths in a few areas in there. There's not much I can tell you about Florida. I don't know if they got as bad as we did, but they really didn't get harmed because they usually get hit with hurricanes every different direction there. All right. Another quick view from the Gulf of Mexico up to where it was heading. It was going northeast up towards Florida Panhandle, up through Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. And then it went out. Then the Hurricane Agnes went out to sea. At that point, there was no one telling you which way the storm was going. They thought they was going to go east towards England, but hurricanes back then changes courses. After it changed course, it went over to Long Island and cut back down slightly down into Chesapeake Bay, and then went up the Susquehanna River Basin, straight up through Pennsylvania. And as you can see, highest water that dumped during the storm was over central Pennsylvania and lower New York State. They got nailed pretty good, but what really hurt them was it was a cold spring, and it was a lot of water already, and also there was still might be some snow in the mountains. And when it came across to June, the snow melted, and 8 inches to 12 inches of rain wasn't good for this area at that time, and flooding pursued and a lot of damage happened. And at this point, it was a tropical storm. It was never a hurricane when it hit Pennsylvania, and never turned into a hurricane. So that's an odd thing too. That National Weather Service didn't give no warning, but that's the way it came. And the flooding pursued through Harrisburg, up through Lock Haven, up through Syracuse. They got hit hard, and many places had a lot of damage because of flooding, fires, and sewage and all that stuff. It came up through and everything turned to muck after it went down. You will see later on in this film that there will be a lot of damage through Lock Haven area. I didn't get to Harrisburg area, but you probably can see what I'm talking about. And there was damage of unassisted damage, which is caused by motorboats, which knocked out windows in the Lock Haven area and probably in other cities around Susquehanna River, trying to save lives and get people from their second floors and roofs. And you can see here in Lock Haven at the Woolworth store, it looked like it was up to 8 feet to 9 feet of water to 10 feet. The highest in this area was, I think it was 15 feet in one of the stores. But it was the highest recorded flood in Lock Haven history. There was other floods like the 1936, 1989, and several more back in the past. But this is what caused a lot of damage. There will be several more stuff coming up. I'm just going a little at a time. You can see in this picture how high the water is, and have fun with the rest of the picture. Rest of this. You can see the aftermath. I'm going to go back and forth with the aftermath and during the flood, and maybe things years later to tell you about where things got flooded at and stuff. But in 1972, the Agnes flood, not St. Agnes. Everybody's saying St. Agnes. It's just Hurricane Agnes to Tropical Storm Agnes. Was a high damage, one of the highest damaged hurricanes at that time. Well, it wasn't a hurricane when it did the most damage. It was a tropical storm, and that went clear up to Canada and killed a few people in a trailer court, and then it went over the seas to the other side and still was doing damage in England area. The storm dissipated about 2 days after it went over to England. The storm will never be named again. Agnes is gone. They took it off the market. This is up in Mill Hall. The bridge was wiped out after the storm went through. During the storm it went through, the bridge was wiped out, and many bridges were wiped out during the 72 flood that had to be replaced, and many roads were destroyed too, and a lot of bridges, a lot of docks and all that stuff they usually have along the river destroyed. This is East Main Street, and You can see how high the water is in a different area. This is up near Henderson Street, and you can see Firestone off to the side, the sign. This area got about 7 to 8 feet of water in. It's on the lower half of Lock Haven, but Lock Haven got flooded by two streams, the Bald Eagle stream and the west branch of the Susquehanna River, and it came up on both sides. This area right here, I think it was Henderson Street. They got people who was on the roof of their porch, out through the roof and everything over to the boat. They did that many times over the history of the flood. So they were heroes, these people, but they also were destruction people too. I already told you about the boat breaking windows. This is the Lock Haven Library basement. They were putting books up so they would dry out and try to get them to the original, but it would never happen completely. They would have to throw many books out at several libraries that was in the area, and that's including the Ross and the college. Now, the college didn't get hit as bad. The library was just out of the way, but it did get, it had more people coming in to read the books, and it got destroyed that way. You can see the book destruction in this library here. It was totally gone, a lot of them books, and they had to be thrown out. The publishers and stuff, a lot of them was rare books that never could be fixed or done. This happens, sadly it happens in a lot of places that year. And it's hard to find a lot of books that you're really looking for because of the 72 flood and many other fires and stuff that happened during the flood and other times. There was much cleanup to do after the flood, and it really stunk. Right there at this flower store on Belfont Avenue, it was a goner. Because they got rid of all their stuff that needed to be in there, and all the flowers were gone. They were not good for that season for at least 3 or 4 weeks. As you can see, the water was so powerful, the current in that area ripped the cars out, roofs off, flipped them over, destroyed a lot of businesses, and destroyed light poles, and all kinds of other destruction would happen during that season. You name it, it probably happened during that rainstorm called Agnes. This might be the same view to you, but this is a little bit different. On the left side, you can see the Pepsi sign on the buildings off to the left, and you can see how high the water is. It's a little lower down this end of the city, but it still was bad no matter wherever you went because of what was left over, and a lot of people was displaced and was put in the college dormitories and other places that can put them in. This is a perfect sample of a picture that's hard to get in. Because of the storm and everything, the pictures aren't good in many cases, and it's hard to get a lot into this stuff and hard to find. Here's a sample of Army rescuing people. They had their big choppers out, and they had a lot of military out trying to save people, and afterwards they said military law, militia law, or whatever he said. Governor P. I can't remember the name of him, but I know it started with a P. But he had a hard time finding places for him to rescue people to and dropping food off. One occasion they landed in a guy's field and they almost got stuck in the mud. Other occasions they try to find open roads to land on. But most cases they had to get the food from Scranton Wilkes-Barre Airport because that was the only airport that wasn't flooded in the central Pennsylvania area. The governor declared Pennsylvania a national disaster afterwards. And so did the New York governor declare New York the national disaster. The water came down like buckets, and the storm was hitting hard. And the army was also hitting the turf hard too, bringing as many people, saving people as much as possible. It wasn't easy on them because they had people next to areas that could catch fire and hard to get to, and it was hard. They tried their best to get to everybody that was on a roof, everybody that they could see, everybody they could find, and they were the national heroes that year. As I mentioned before, many airports were flooded. This is a Piper International Airport at the time, and you can see the airplanes underwater up to the fuselage bodies and the cockpits. After the storm went through, they got them out of there, and they lost several of them because of flooding. Damaged a lot of mechanical equipment, but they salvaged about 95%. They were lucky. They could have salvaged less than that. And many other airports had the same problem. It was underwater. Here you can see the muck and the damage that was left over after the storm waters receded. You can see it was muck, and it wasn't all muck there. It was also sewage, chemicals, vinegar, vodka, you name it. It was in that sludge, and it really, really stunk, what I was told. People who had to dug their way out of their places and cleaned out their stuff, and broken windows and everything else was thrown out in the streets. So later on, the dump trucks can come and shovel it up into the back of the place. People in back of their trucks and stuff, so that this stuff would get out of the town. Sorry about the blurred picture here. You can see a little bit more. You can see the truck in there in the background, which they were throwing the stuff in, and they were taking it out of town and burying it over top. Once they put it in the ground, they buried it with more dirt and gravel, and then they did the same every time they did that. This was a $1 billion effort that year, and it made it really hard for everyone. But a lot of people was glad to 72 for what happened, and why they were glad is because now they could get the dike levy up, which they did. But it took them to 1991 to get started. As you can see, more boats. People who had the boats went and saved a lot of lives, got people out of stores, and also was checking to see if the stuff was damaged, but the wake of the water destroyed more windows, and there is cases in Lock Haven where there's still windows out, but you don't notice it. They have what they call plexiglass over the windows, and it was cheaper putting that up instead of putting regular windows in. You can see I'm going to leave you go through here as much as possible. I'm leaving you, if you want to settle down and set it down, go ahead. Slow it down, read the stuff about the flood, and even pause it if you want. Okay, now I'm going down where there was other places that got the flooding at, and that's Knoebels, and Hershey, and Harrisburg. Many other parks got flooded too. That includes Lakemont, and it also includes Del Grosso, and many parks went out of business because of the 72 flood. They were too destroyed. This flood took a lot out of all these places. I mean, a couple rides, which after 72 floods disappeared down at Knoebels and Hershey. The shoot to shoot slide down at Hershey was destroyed by it, and much ado, they came back, but not and a lot of places after the 72 flood went broke and went out of business. They couldn't keep up after that. This is Hershey Chocolate World. It changed after the 72 flood, and it turned into in a way better. But before that, years before, they lost Milton Hershey, and then the ones who took over changed the name of his Hershey Park employees stuff. And as I said, Hershey Park was one of them that lost several rides during the 72 flood. Shoot to shoot, which took you down off a hill and into the water, like a roller coaster type ride into the water. That was one of the best ones. They really wanted it back after that, but they still haven't put it back yet. At this point, this is Harrisburg, and one of the bridges that was replaced after the 72 flood. But here is the damage cost. Was 151 people died during the storm. One of them was several of them was because of in Danville, Pennsylvania, two people trying to get railroad cars off to one area, and the bridge was washed out while they were on there. Two in Cuba, and over the top several there, and two in Canada. And then over in England there was two. There was a signature, which I'm gonna put in next.